Assalamualaikum everyone, and a very good day. We are still waiting for one of the panelists to log in. So if you can give another 2 or 3 minutes before we officially start, thank you very much. Yes. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah and a very good day to everyone. Welcome to Shariah Minds webinar series number 1. And we are happy to announce today that we have received more than 500 registered participants and people are still coming in. So, but I think we are behind the time and one of our panelists is, we are trying to help him to get in. So perhaps we can go on first with the two panelists. So the theme for the first webinar is Maqasid al-Sharia vis-a-vis Islamic financial engineering in battling COVID-19. Okay, this webinar is brought to you by Amani Media. And together with us today, there are three world-renowned panelists, Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar from Kuala Lumpur, Dr. Muhammad Amin Ali Katan from Kuwait, and Dr. Humayun Dar from London. A simple house rule for participant, if you like to ask question, you may do so by putting in the question in the text or Zoom group chat. And for the panelists, you are given approximately 15 minutes per person for you to basically share your point of view. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar to begin his panel discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon or morning wherever you are at this juncture. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to our first ever series on Shariah Minds, focusing on Maqasid al-Sharia in the light of the current crisis that we are having at the moment, and try to see into how could we leverage on Maqasid al-Sharia to bring the policies instead of the products or the specific rulings to overcome the challenges that we are facing in the midst of widespread of coronavirus or COVID-19. I would like to thank the panelists, Dr. Huenda and Dr. Muhammad Amil Qattan, my good friend for many years, for agreeing to be with us on this session. I would like to encourage the participant to pose any relevant question. We might be able to pick some of them, and perhaps we can revert back to you a bit later. But let us enjoy the session. This is session very much informal, very unstructured, if you like. Try to share the high-level understanding and insights that every one of us will bring to the table to help everyone to understand more about our religion, our desired and intended policies of the Sharia, and how do these policies correlate or relate or co-work with the Islamic financial products in the market, and at the end of the day, how could we move forward to give the best of the best to the whole community while in compliance to the Sharia principle. As you know, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, Maqasid al-Sharia are basically the high-level policies of the Sharia. Yes, Maqasid al-Sharia represent the very objective of the Sharia, but in a nutshell, Maqasid al-Sharia also, more importantly, represent the voice of the heaven, the policies, the best practices from the heaven to govern the conduct of human being by not providing the specific legal judgment that could happen, but most importantly and significantly providing the general principle of justice, distribution of wealth, make sure that people are able to work and people are able to get the security for them to enjoy their life, and so on and so forth. So the very objective of the Sharia are well documented in the body of Maqasid al-Sharia. And Maqasid al-Sharia cannot exist in isolation of the data and the facts of life, because Maqasid al-Sharia would technically represent the data of life. In fact, from the economic point of view, maqasid al-sharia can only be deduced or crafted by observing a number of Quranic verses to represent a particular message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has been all the time imperative for us to it is based on the issue of doing the empirical research to make sure that it represents the collective understanding and insight of the Quran and the Sharia. So that in our case, we need to focus a bit on the data of the current time. So perhaps the data has changed a lot from the financial sector, education sector, import and export, the new job, and so on and so forth. So let us go back to the very data of life as we, progress in our life in many parts of the world, not knowing what would happen in the next few months, but we cannot be, and we have to be mindful all the time. The data are coming slowly, but certain circumstances and modern condition. Now let me move on to the Islamic finance to give you the very meaning of Islamic finance. As you know, Islamic finance is very much a financial intermediary trying their level best among Islamic financial institutions to connect the deficit of the deficit unit of the society, channeling the deposit to the fund users, or in the capital market, which is very much more direct financial intermediation, allowing the people with capital to invest direct in stock market, in sukuk, and what have you. So as you know, the Islamic finance, as well as the modern finance, is facing a number of challenges. The issue of delinquency. Many people are affected in terms of their earning and salaries, and they got to be looked after with regard to the ability to pay on time or the financial obligation. And we're talking about a number of accounts which are being monitored closely by the respective banks around the globe. And for the banks, they have perhaps a bit of constraint in order to share the profit to the Mudarabah account and to some other account because the cash flow is not coming. In fact, many banks are start talking not even about profitability of the bank, but also about the ability of the bank to ensure the cash flow, even for the bank, not for the for business owners, for the economy of the country. And this is quite challenging because if the bank are not solvent, if the bank are not liquid, so they might be going to many deep problem and issues in terms of complying to certain capital requirement and accounting requirement that the bank must be all the time liquid and solvent. And this is one of the challenges as we speak that we are, expecting some, if not most of the bank would be having this problem. And we have heard that many government of the day, they have kindly offered a kind of moratorium, a kind of soft policies to, uplift the obligation to make the payment to the banks either in 6 months or 9 months or 12 months. And that is a good policy to soften the impacts of the COVID-19 on some segment of people, particularly the individuals and the small enterprises, and this could give them a kind of an opportunity to breathe a bit, to be able to pay back the banks after 6 months or 9 or 12 months respectively. But the issue that we have to see whether this could affect the banks at the end of the day, because 6 months of not getting the income, that will affect perhaps not all the banks, but the bank with limited reserve that they have to sustain during the difficult time. And again, when it comes to maqasid and Islamic finance, we need to open up the discussion by opening so many things. In fact, we have to go back to the drawing board and try to relook into each and every product like murabaha, ijara, tawaruk, istisna, with regard to the financing, the deposit, with regard to mudarabah, with regard to hedging, with regard to tahawud, with regard to sukuk and capital market. With regard to capital market, for example, we need to revise the underlying denominator for screening. Perhaps we can no longer rely on the 12-month average for asset, total asset or market cap for the stock screening. We need to make it lengthen or make it more flexible, because many of the companies after the first quarter of this year will register a very increased downturn of the revenue, and that will affect the total asset and the market cap of the company, because people are not buying any more the stock for whatever reason, and that will affect the screening process. So we need my argument. I wanted to put on record that the scholars, the regulators, the stakeholders of many Islamic banks around the globe, we need to create a new jurisprudence, a new fiqh of whatever coronavirus fiqh or jurisprudence of crisis. We need to create a new jurisprudence under the preamble of Maqasid al-Sharia to look into the welfare of everyone, the funders, the depositors, and the fund users, the banks and the regulators and the community at last. So this is something that we need to create a new jurisprudence. I have the the liberty to take this opportunity to suggest and to propose in this limited time that we need to create a new jurisprudence, a jurisprudence which is a new perspective altogether into looking into many issues which are confronting almost everyone in this difficult time. Last but not least, I have only 2 or 3 minutes outstanding. So let me focus on the challenges of COVID-19. Everyone is aware that COVID-19 has brought a number of challenges. Some of them we are expecting, and we are doing the homework to face the future, but some of them are beyond our expectation. He has crippled many industries, and some of them are well funded by our Islamic banking and sukuk and capital market. So surely they got hit very hard by this COVID-19. On the other side of the coin, we have challenges within ourselves. We need to regain the growth mindset. We need to, to bring back to the community the mindset which is thinking of bringing the growth agenda in the society. People need to spend the money. People need to mobilize their surplus, if any, and we need to create some incentive for people to invest, and for the government and many other people to create the growth mindset, I call it, because we cannot be lying down, we cannot be doing nothing. We have to bring back the growth mindset back to the main platform of economic activities. We need to fight against any stagnant of economic activities. Yes, it will slow down, but it cannot be slowing down forever because at the end of the day, people need to do the economic activities to generate their own revenue, their own income, and to create a prosperous level of the world. And we need to see the new preference among the people, the funders, those with surplus and those with deficit. What are the new preferences that they want to have, that they are looking forward to have, and something that they don't want to have. So this is a new way of looking things. We can relate back to the new jurisprudence of COVID-19 for the Islamic financial institution and Maqasid Shariah, a high policy of Islam. And last but not least, I would like to focus on something which is might be relevant, that from my perspective, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, uh, during the crisis and post-crisis, we need to pick one or two new maqasid al-sharia that can help us to prosper faster, quicker, and smarter. We cannot be fighting all the battle at one go. We need to be selective. We need to focus on one or two uh, interesting vertical of struggle. That could be employment, that could be proper distribution of equity in the society, the ability to get the financing, debt or equity to move on with the business, or perhaps we can focus on education or food and services and what have you, and that could lead us to the greater value chain in the society. We have to let go some of the focus of the world, and we need to redefine the new focus guided by the Maqasid Shariah, guided by the new jurisprudence of Islamic financial institution, fiqh al-Maliyah Islami al-Jadidah, the new jurisprudence of Islamic financial system, and taking into account all the challenges, all the problems that we are facing at the current time and in the near future. With that, I would like to thank all the brothers who are with us on this session, all the panelists, and all of you from everywhere in the world who have joined this session. Perhaps we can have another session of interaction after we have heard from each and every panelist in the next few minutes also. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Daud Bakar, for very good information and knowledge sharing, as well as thank you so much for keeping it 15 minutes sharp. So without further ado, perhaps, before that, let me announce the arrival of Dr. Muhammad Qatan. Welcome, Dr. Muhammad Qatan. Thank you very much for, again, for participating as a panelist. So perhaps we move on with Dr. Humayundar. Please, over to you, Dr. Humayundar. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is and Ramadan Kareem. It's already almost end of the first week of Ramadan. Although the lockdown in UK has slowed down a lot of things, but Ramadan is passing very quickly. It is indeed my pleasure and honor to share this platform with two distinguished and leading experts in Islamic banking and finance, both of them, Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar and Dr. Muhammad Amin Al-Qattan. They are leading experts in Islamic jurisprudence, a lot more knowledgeable than me, and it is indeed a pleasure to speak on this platform with them. A lot of things which I thought of sharing with you have already been preempted by Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar. This is what he already does. He oversmarts everyone who happens to be around him, and I really appreciate his thoughts and the quickness of his approach, which has helped the industry in a very big way. Having said that, I would like to share a few thoughts on the COVID-19 and its implications for Islamic banking and finance, and of course for the overall economy as well. In the countries like UK, we are facing the problem a lot more than so many other countries in the world. Yesterday, the government announced the confirmed deaths of over 26,000 because of this. Something which is happening only in a few countries. The death count in most of the countries in the world is rather a lot less than this one. The financial effect of the COVID-19 has not come to the surface as yet. Again, if I refer to the UK, in UK we have not received any reports from any major financial institution to report the effect of this lockdown. Although from other businesses like airlines, tourism industry, a lot of damages and losses have already been reported, and the retail sector has completely been destroyed. Banks, on the other hand side, I believe they will take some time. Okay, once the restrictions on mobility are removed, then there would be some kind of assessment of the real damages, and accordingly they would come up with some plans. In the context of Islamic banking and finance, I would say that the situation is not entirely different from what is happening in conventional banking and finance. I have spoken with quite a number of CEOs of Islamic banks and financial institutions, and so far, they have not shown any serious concerns on the sustainability and stability of their individual banks. It just has happened that the operations have stopped, or the operations have slowed down significantly in terms of the mainstream indicators of financial health of the banks. They feel quite comfortable, I would say, uh, given that the recovery is quick. When we look at the economic indicators forecasted by the likes of World Bank, IMF, etc., yes, the GDP growth has decreased significantly this year, and the expectation is that by the end of the year, economic activity would have hit very badly. However, for the next year, the forecast is quite good. Okay. So this is an encouraging thing that the multilateral institutions are taking an optimistic view on the recovery. What happens in reality, it's only for us to know once that happens. In case of Islamic banking and finance, I must say that we have to go back to the basics. I have written my pause of thought for Isfire, our bi-monthly magazine, which we publish from London. In the April issue, my pause for thought is actually on the opportunities which COVID-19 may provide to Islamic banking and finance. And I have mentioned that in crisis, you don't have to go for very sophisticated kind of financial engineering. Rather, doing simple things may help. Okay. We have seen a lot of thought process going on in different social media platforms on restructuring of Islamic financial products, restructuring of debt, etc. Of course, from thought process viewpoint, these are very important and relevant activities. However, I believe that in the COVID-19 case, or in the aftermath of this one, there is a need to come up with financial engineering for institutional development. Dr. Daud Bakr has mentioned that maybe financial engineering for product development is not very relevant, and I concur with him. It's actually a time which should allow us to go back to basics and assess ourselves what we have done in the last 35 to 50 years in terms of developments in Islamic banking and finance. A lot of good things have happened, but there might be certain things which need some kind of attention from us going forward. I will give three examples, okay, which could be seen to develop Islamic finance. And here I'm using the word Islamic finance deliberately because Islamic banking could be only a subset of that one. So to develop Islamic finance in the post-COVID-19 world, we need to look at the examples like Islamic relief in the United Kingdom. We in the United Kingdom are about 3.5 million Muslims living in this country. And Islamic Relief was started as a relief organization about 25, 30 years back. And over the years and over the 3 decades, it has evolved into a conglomerate. It has its charity function, it has its social enterprise function, and it is now into financial services as well. It offers microfinance services to uh, underprivileged communities in a number of countries in the world. So, started as a charity, as a not for profit organization, it has become a big Islamic conglomerate of which finance is one activity. And I think, okay, this is something we should be looking into for further development of Islamic finance. Uh, Developing bigger entities which should have only a focus, just a focus on finance. The second good example comes from Malaysia. Tabung Haji was started as a Hajj management organization, which has become a sort of conglomerate. It owns or it has shareholding in a bank, in a takaful company. It offers travel services and quite a number of other related businesses as well. So on a holding company level, uh, is the kind of business we should be looking into. The focus should be on the holding level, and of course, the individual organizations and businesses within the group can be looked into as individual entities. The third example I would like to quote, which is not fully Sharia compliant, is from Pakistan. It's called Fauji Foundation, an organization, again, a not for profit organization set up by the government of Pakistan for the welfare of the retired army personnel. And this has evolved into a big financial conglomerate, I should say business conglomerate, with interests in almost everything. It has a bank, it is into insurance, it has a number of cement production units as well. It even produces cornflakes. It has a university, it runs a number of schools and hospitals. And according to some estimates, it contributes to about 30% of the formal employment in the country. So these are the examples we should be looking into for further development of Islamic finance in the years to come, when for a number of institutions, and of course Islamic banks involved as well, the things would be very different. We have already started talking about a new normal. The things would not be as normal as we used to have in the past. It will be a new life. And in this context, there is a need to come up with new thinking. Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakr has rightly and aptly mentioned the possibility, or this is his proposal, of developing a new jurisprudence, new fiqh. And mashallah, he has already given a name to it as well, Al-Fiqh Islami Al-Mali Al-Jadida. And I think in the modern context, there is a need to come up with the new approach to solving financial issues and matters. At the end, I would like to suggest that, sustainable development goals, they have become a norm. Everyone talks about SDGs. There are 17 SDGs, and different organizations, excuse me, are focusing on their chosen SDGs. We have been talking about Maqasid Sharia for a very long time. I think there is a need to popularize the term. Higher objectives of Sharia is the English term which we use normally for Maqasid Sharia. And we start with 5 Maqasid Sharia. We should call them HOS1, HOS2, HOS3, HOS4, and 5. And under 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there should be some subcategories as well, and we can call them 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And we come up with a list, well-defined list of Maqasid Sharia, and identifying those Maqasid Sharia which are relevant to the development of Islamic finance. We should focus on those Maqasid Sharia, and going forward, make Islamic banking and finance more relevant to the needs of the communities around the world, where Islamic banking and finance operates. With this, I would like to thank Amani Group of Companies and Amani Media for offering me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts in the presence of two leading experts in Islamic banking and finance. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Humayunda. It's very exciting, as always, when hearing your thoughts and ideas. Thank you so much again. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Qatan for his turn to share his opinion and view. فليتفضل أستاذ.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. And Ramadan Mubarak for all of you. And I may thank Amani Media for this event. And I really feel very happy to join with the distinguished speakers, Dr. Muhammad Dawood Bakr and Dr. Humayun Dar. And really, I couldn't catch up Dr. Dawood Bakr from beginning, from technical problem from my side. So I may repeat some of his excellent thoughts about the crisis we are in. Really, I may mention few points from Dr. Dawood Bakr, which is I have to, concentrate on. Also from Dr. Humayun Dar. Dr. Dawood Bakr mentioned very attractive point, which is we need for a new fiqh, if we can say. Actually, in our region here, we have many attempts to answer new raised questions related to ibadat, but related to muamalat not yet, except maybe can we change the price in murabaha when we revolving murabaha? So many of these scholars came up with an opinion which is not Sharia acceptable. Very few of them, at least 12 people, or scholars, and this is maybe the only, as far as I know, in our region here, a new fatwa, let's say, rediscussing this fatwa again according to the recent circumstances. But other new fatwas related to ibadat, especially, the masjid being closed all over this area, maybe in many areas worldwide, and there is no jama'ah, no jumu'ah, and now we are in Ramadan, and so forth. So this is some really needs, it's a gap to rediscuss financial issues from Sharia point of view. But nevertheless, I can go back, one of the leaders who, or scholars who wrote a new, let's say, efforts or ijtihad about maqasid al-Sharia, even before, the crisis, a long time ago, maybe 10 years back, Dr. Muhammad Najatullah Siddiqui, he wrote a very excellent book, and he reviews is it possibility from Sharia point of view to add to the 5 pillars of Maqasid al-Sharia, if we can mention that as maybe being mentioned before me, religion, the life, the mind, property, and offspring. Can we add more on that, Maqasid al-Sharia? So he came up with after discuss from Sharia point of view, is it possible or not? He came up and add a few of these maqasids. Maybe I refer to his book, Maqasid al-Sharia, very interesting book. He's in this book in Urdu, English, and Arabic. Also, Dr. Dawood Bakr, he gave an idea which is very important. We should, in Islamic finance structure, we should concentrate on one of these elements or sectors Islamic finance or Islamic banks should concentrate on. It's a crisis. We cannot solve this problem or all of these issues. And we've seen countries couldn't solve many of these problems. What about private or one or two or three? In some countries, they have just two or three Islamic banks. They couldn't. It's not easy to solve all of these crises, issues, or problems. Also, Dr. Humayun Dar mentioned very important point. Let's go simple. That's true. Let's go back and simplify things. Not necessarily to be very complicated contracts or deals. Nowadays, we need to help the big sector of the people, which is the middle class and under middle class people. They faced the problem, although the crisis, attack everybody in the countries, but at least rich people, they are, infected by coronavirus, but they have at least their own medical covered. I'll come back to this point later on. The big portion or the big sector of the people attacked by the virus who couldn't provide their medical cover. And also which is the second point, very important, they couldn't continue their business. They depend on their salary, monthly salary, or at least limited income from their firms or institutions. So this is the point, very important. We need to go back again and restructure our business strategy, Islamic banks, to, provide more services to the big sector in all these countries, which is rich countries or underdeveloped countries. And he mentioned, Dr. Humayun Dar, he mentioned a very good example, which is really very important to study and apply. Let's say Islamic relief is very successful example, and we have other examples worldwide in Islamic or outside Islamic countries. So these points very important. Really, I have to mention them. Generally speaking, this crisis is not the only crisis faced by Islamic countries. Yeah, if we wanted to just go very quick, other similar crises, Palestinian people, they faced these problems, disasters and crises faced them since 1940s, previous centuries. So, and what happens in the Syria almost before 10 years now, 9-10 years now, people being killed and they suffered for ages, Palestinian, Syrian, in Yemen, what happens? But maybe coronavirus, it's more international, more very fast, and attacked everybody. And the countries worldwide, they are not updated, let's say, to such crisis, not aware of. This is what happened exactly. So my first, opinion, this is mankind of my opinion. We should Islamically, from Islamic point of view, from Maqasid al-Shariah, we should cooperate with the whole people in the worldwide. This is very, very, very important. Using the Islamic finance mechanism, let's say, which is quite normal worldwide, quite adapted worldwide. So this is the idea. And do not go for more sophisticated and complicated structures. Let's go simple, as Dr. Humayun Dar said. If I may, in the top management لا سمح الله, in any of these Islamic banks, because I'm Sharia scholar, not technician one. So I'll go first of all to safeguard the health of people. I have to go to, encourage takaful sector as far as I know. And this is what I missed really in this crisis. I didn't hear anything from the insurance, generally speaking, insurance sectors. Although I know insurance will not cover these crises, but nevertheless, I've heard nothing about this sector, which is very important to restructuring our takaful companies and institutions. So I have to really encourage them to cover the health of people, regardless about their wealthy. And this is very important. After I build really immunity of these people and cover their medical requirement, then I will go to step number 2. I have to provide them jobs, enough jobs. I may concentrate after coronavirus. Nowadays, nobody can, be very accurate what will happen, when it will end. So number 2, I have to cover their health, these people, using takaful, using other elements, and maybe cooperation societies or institutions, cooperative one. And this will give new ideas for Islamic financial sectors. Number 3, also I have to provide or share in food security for the people. In our area here, it's because we don't have any agriculture, generally speaking, in GCC countries, in Gulf countries. We faced very sensitive situation where we depend on importing day needs from foods or kind of foods. So it's very, very important to secure such a sector, this is a very attractive line of investment for Islamic financial institutions. Also, I need to mention very quickly, we have to use Qard and Qard al-Hasan and Waqf elements, which is very important to develop all sectors. These elements is very attractive, very sustainable tools. We can use it more and more by develop these kind of elements in Islamic banking sector. And this kind of sector is covered many of the country's expenditures. So maybe we can cooperate with these governmental bodies by reduce their burdens, if we can say. The last one, or the last point, really, I really encourage after the coronavirus, I really encourage Islamic banks, instead of going to courts to judge about their properties, I really advise them to using arbitration and reconciliation more than court people, court firms, court institution. It's a long time, spending money, spending time. It's better to go to reconciliation or arbitration. It's easier to cooperate with people to take this burden instead of facing problems. This is my need, this is his right, this is my property. It's a long way. This is a crisis. It's attacked all people worldwide, whether locally or regional or internationally. So this is my last advice, and thank you very much for all of you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Muhammad Katan, for very insightful information. So now we have another 15 minutes left, and I have compiled so many questions coming up from the participants. Thank you very much for your good question. But the plan here, we have to select and choose the best question, and we will share this question with all the 3 panelists for them to share their view. And if we have more time, we will allow the next 3 questions to come in. Yeah. So the first question: what is more relevant maqasid to be promoted now, or perhaps new maqasid to be promoted? So perhaps Dr. Daud Bakar, you may want to start first with your input before I go for the next 2 panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Razi, the moderator. If I were to comment on that hypothetical question on what would be the new maqasid to be promoted and to be developed and crafted, given the current crisis of COVID-19 and the loss of jobs and the loss of earnings among individual and SME and many other corporate sector that will affect the individual workers. I would like to put a motion that perhaps the time has come to develop a maqasid of employment to create more jobs at all levels, the retiree, the single mother, the young graduates across the board. And the intention of the Sharia is to make people work, to be able to work. And I quote the statement by Al-Qarafi when he said in his book, Al-Aslu fi Nasi Al-Kasbu, that human are being created by Allah to be able to work. And by working, he can sustain himself and can support the other maqasid Sharia, religion, security, life, dignity, education, and what have you. So people have not spoken about employment, but perhaps this is the time, for the first time ever, to focus a bit on creating employment by government, by the private, by everyone, the NGO, Zakat, Wakaf, focusing on creating employment opportunities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Daud. Yeah. Perhaps I pass the next, the question to Dr. Humayundar. Yeah, please.
Now, the excellent point made by Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakr about development of human resources, employment, which is obviously very important. If I stick to my classification of HOS1, which is on belief, HOS2 on life and related issues, HOS3 on wealth, and HOS5, which is on intellect and human resources, education, etc., that comes under this one, and HOS5 on family and dignity. I would like to, however, pick the protection, preservation, and adornment of wealth. I think it's important for us to come up with a comprehensive range of wealth creation and wealth management solutions for the customers, or even those who are not as yet customers of Islamic financial institutions. So wealth management, wealth creation and wealth management can then be used for protection and preservation and adornment of life, of even contributing for the enhancement of relatedness of belief in our life as well. And wealth management and wealth creation, this is something directly relevant with the financial institutions, and Islamic financial institutions should come up with a new focus on wealth creation and wealth management. Unfortunately, so far, this hasn't been the case. When we look at the Islamic financial institutions exclusively focusing on wealth creation and wealth management, we find there are very few. Our major focus has been on Islamic banking, which has the lion's share of Islamic financial assets worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Humayundar. Yes, Dr. Muhammad Katan, if you can, say a few words on the first question. Okay, can I check with the technical team? Can you check whether you can unmute? Okay, can we get Dr. Muhammad Katan? Yeah, okay, I can hear you now. Can you repeat again? Because the first few seconds you are on. Okay, thank you.
I may concentrate on educational sector because actually we've been shocked by the developed countries. They still in lack of professional in this sector. Really, we couldn't believe that they can't find enough specialists in this medical sector. So what about the other countries, mainly our region here? We need more concentration on medical education, which is, I think, hopefully not. Maybe, inshallah, this idea is not true. In the future, maybe we will face more this kind of corona diseases, maybe with other names. Inshallah, this is not true, will not happen, inshallah. But in case, other, because it's kind of weapon, so maybe they will use it later on. If we discover it came from north, west, east, or south, maybe the other side will produce another kind of weapon. So we need to, cover our area. Generally speaking, even before Corona, we need to concentrate of educational sector really.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Katan. Okay, I move to the second question, but it is a bit, to me, it's a bit, I would say controversial, but it's a good question. That's why I like this question very much. So the next question is that, can we ban the traditional Shariah ruling for crisis management such as COVID-19 at the moment? So I repeat, can we ban the traditional Shariah rulings for crisis management in the context of COVID-19 perhaps? Over to you, Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar.
Okay, thank you, Razi. Thank you for that question. I think there is a mantra saying that extreme condition require extreme measures. We need to be, in sync with the current critical condition of our time. I'm not saying that we should ban the Sharia ruling, but we should be open. We should be looking into the matters again. Dr. Muhammad Amin Al-Qattan mentioned about the issue of restructuring, Qalbudain and what have you, though we know that the RFE has, somehow a concern on the issue of Qalbudain, that we create new financing to help the old financing which is in difficulty. So perhaps the time has come to reopen this discussion, because we need to help the SME people, because they are the one who create the economy, who work in the factory, who bring the food to our table. So we need to make it open and change some of the Sharia ruling to suit the current status of Muraba, extending the period by extending the purchase price or selling price, meaning by the government order, for example, without getting the consent of the customer. When it comes to Ijara, for example, we need to look at the variable part of the Ijara given the current market condition. So this is something that I'm for it. I wanted to support. Of course, we need to do it very carefully, but I don't want to object to any idea to be open and be more pragmatic and to solve the crisis of creating the job, making the bank sustainable, and bringing back the economic activities by creating a new ijtihad where there are room for ijtihad. These are not textual prohibition after all, so we need to be open about it as we are facing the most severe crisis ever on this planet.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad Daud. Yes, over to you, Dr. Humayunda.
Right, and interesting questions, and my answer may not be that interesting. actually there is no need to bend traditional Sharia rulings. Okay. For crisis management, crises, they are exceptions, and there is a well-defined body of rules regarding the exceptions. So if there is an exceptional circumstance, and we have to agree, we means the Sharia scholars and the body of jurists, if they agree on a situation to be extraordinary, for extraordinary situations, okay, there are very well-defined rules. Okay, which means, okay, the exceptions can be created to manage exceptional circumstances. So yes, and I think, okay, this wasn't the intention of the person who asked this question. It's not about bending. It's basically uh, calling upon the relevant rulings of Sharia when it comes to crisis management. On an individual level, if we have a crisis-like situation, life-threatening situation, of course, there are very clear guidelines. If on the level of family, on the level of community, there are some exceptional circumstances, there's maslaha mursala. Okay, we can use the existing body of rules to come up with new solutions. Right. So Sharia is very flexible. Alhamdulillah, we don't have to create something new. Already, a lot of consideration for a multitude of situations and circumstances has already been discussed in the books on fiqh and related sciences.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Humayundar. Okay, I'll pass this question back to Dr. Muhammad Fatan, please. Thank you. Sorry, Dr. Kata, you have to first unmute. Thank you very much.
All right. Actually, I wanted to understand, what does it mean to ban? Is it because now of this crisis, we closed down mosques? So this is to ban previous Sharia scholars' idea? Does that satisfy the people? Because we don't want to go back to previous fatwas. Mean that. As Dr. Humayndar, it's temporary circumstances or extraordinary circumstances. And I'm sure, as he said, Sharia will be, it is very flexible, to face any new issues, which is either to emphasize on the principles and bases and fundamentals of Sharia, and they will give you alternatives, or to ban which is not halal at all, and the people should change. For example, now no way to allow zina, for example. Do you think, anybody can think there is a certain some circumstances will come later on to allow zina and make people change their mind, and scholars give us a new fatwas? There is something you cannot change at all. It's Sharia requirement as well as a human requirement, so an ethical requirement. So to summarize the idea, yes, Sharia is very flexible to what's happening, and this is the big portion of Sharia. The very little fundamentals you cannot change or adjust. It's very few of these, let's say, principles of Sharia. And the wide and the large portion of Sharia is very flexible to serve people, to save mankind, not just only Muslims. So, and the examples is very, very easy nowadays, what's happening with the people with coronaviruses. And this is what make me to say we need to develop the fiqh according to the temporary circumstances, and it's easy for scholars, but which this one will need a few requirements. Number one, give me the technician in banking sector who understand banking 100%, who will raise these questions to the scholars who can understand business. Then they will give you very sufficient answers. Because we discovered many times the professional, they don't understand properly what is the banking exactly sometimes. So when they elaborate some of these ideas, financial ideas or contracts, the Sharia board will respond to them wrongly because the question was wrong, not correct. So this is the idea. Give me very, sufficient requirement for from technical point of view. Then the Sharia, inshallah, the scholars will respond to these developed, let's say, of the banking or finance sector.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Katan. Very, very good answer. Okay, I shall move to the next three questions. I hope we still have the time. Okay, the first question is, many SMEs which are currently having liquidity problems are also reluctant to take more loan or financing. How to encourage Islamic banks to offer equity financing or new types of solution without increasing SME leverage ratio? I hope you can get the question, Dr. Daud, or over to you now. Unmute, please, Doctor. Okay. No, yes.
Yeah. Okay, briefly, in the interest of the time, this is a dilemma we need to study at carefully, because on one hand, SME will not be, willing to take more debt and more leverage, but at the same time, they need more funding to start new business. On the other hand, the banks are not willing to give equity because they're not supposed to give equity because the capital requirement will go up, capital adequacy ratio and whatnot. So this is a big of dilemma. So perhaps the best way is to have a hybrid between the pure debt, quasi-debt, quasi-equity and pure equity, so that we can see a whole stream of financing to suit the current market segment. This is new fiqh we need to discuss, whether we can have quasi musharaka, for example, quasi mudaraba and not pure mudaraba to suit the current state. It's not debt, it's not liability, it's not equity for that matter. So I don't want to go into detail, but at least the session is able to raise the issue. We need a new jurisprudence to see into this matter, because equity is quite high for the SME to take, because they need to pay more than 20%. Equity is a lot higher, the cost compared to debt. But at the same time, they cannot take more debt because that will make their balance sheet so ugly. So this is the issue. I can comment in general, but we need to really look into the matter from data perspective. Back to you, Razi.
Right, thank you very much, Doctor. Sounds like financial engineering that needs takes place post-COVID. Yeah, Dr. Humayunda, do you want me to repeat the question, or you can just answer?
I would, inshallah, answer.
Okay.
I think there is a need to look around and find some platforms and structures which are already in existence. Because you are in Malaysia, so I will give a Malaysian example again. A few years back, 6 banks under the patronage of Bank Negara Malaysia came together and set up investment account platform. I think the developments like investment account platform can be used to offer financing to SMEs or any other new ventures as well. Okay. In a way which in itself would be a hybrid form, as Dr. Daud Bakr mentioned. Okay, it could be on equity basis, it could be on musharaka mudarba basis on one end, However, when it comes to the exposure of the participating banks, it could be a fixed return debt kind of arrangement for the banks. So here is the an example of smartly thinking about using existing uh, products, platforms, and arrangements which have already been developed. And there are quite a number of other examples when it comes to the technology platforms. So I think the important thing would be creating a credible link between Islamic banks and crowdfunding platforms so that all the parties involved, i.e., the crowdfunders, banks, and of course those who receive funding, in this case SMEs, they are better off. So yes, there is a possibility of coming up with the arrangements. And this is not relevant to only COVID-19, but COVID-19 could be something which could stimulate a development in this context. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Humayunda. Over to you, Dr. Muhammad Khattan.
Yes, I really encourage this situation for SMEs to depend on the governmental development banks more than the private sector, because development governmental institution, let's say, more than banks maybe, they requirement they should have less requirement than the private banking or banks. I mean, especially in the area of capital adequacy maybe or other issues, so they can cooperate with them such circumstances. If there isn't sometimes such kind of banks, so this is really a problematic banks structure in the whole country. The other issue, I kept really encourage all kind of financial engineering, especially Islamic one, to depend mostly on their own resources, i.e., to keep enough reserves to face any problems. So this is very important. Even they are SMEs, they can put a structure who provides some reserves to face any unexpected circumstances. This is very important. And if usual SMEs structure is not concerning because they sign with different sufficient and wealthy organizations. So this time, coronavirus told us, be careful, you have to distribute your risks and put a very important portion of reserves to cover any unexpected shortcuts.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Khattan. Okay, for the interest of time, I just pick one last question, and perhaps, yeah, maybe the panelists can choose to answer quickly. Okay, the question is, currently there are issues at hand where the business wanted to be bailed out by the government, but at the same time, the government having a challenge with a limited resource available, and the main priority is first to save the life, and may not be able to help businesses, but only to help individual citizens of the country and let the business die off by itself if they can't survive on their own. What is your view on this? Thank you. Dr. Daud, over to you. Unmute. Okay.
Yeah, very tough question, to be honest, because the word bailout could be negative on many and critical to the nation. We need to do whatever needed to save that particular industry. For example, let's say Petronas of Malaysia, for example. So we need to save the highway of Malaysia, for example. So because this is the backbone of Malaysian economy that help to do the transportation of services, food, and what have you. So there are many aspects which are very critical. The only problem, how does the government, how would they going to be able to do the bailout? So this is a new initiative. They have to borrow more money locally and overseas. So they need to do whatever needed to be done as if they are saving their life, and also to save the source of life, which is the backbone of the whole economy of the nation. So we need to study more and build out. Sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's bad, but in some cases it is needed and necessary for a greater purpose of maintaining the sustainability of the nation. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you, Dr. Muhammad Daud. Dr. Humayun Dar?
Right. I think it depends on the individual circumstances of the countries. Okay. Again, because right now I'm sitting in London, I can give you example of UK. The UK government has already come up with a very comprehensive package. I wouldn't say a bailout, but a package to help those who are affected or who are being affected by the current crisis. Uh, uh, in another country where the government is already facing huge budget deficit, they don't have resources, they would find it very difficult. However, always there is a possibility of identifying an opportunity. I would like to point out the possibility of using what I would like to term as smart health. In the face of the COVID-19 crisis, a number of high quality, previously high quality assets, they would become bad assets, distressed assets. Now, if the owners or shareholders of these assets are looking for help from the government can come up with a national fund of distressed assets and acquire those assets on very distressed, depressed prices. Improve it, and once that improvement is realized, selling it back to the shareholders or new shareholders, that would allow the government to help the economy in such a way that it helps it in improving its budgetary position in the medium to long run as well. And this is something which individual Islamic banks and financial institutions can do as well. I think this is the time to come up with a global Islamic opportunities fund, which should look into distressed assets all over the world and for the industry. And of course, okay, this global Islamic fund for distressed assets should be sponsored by major Islamic banking and financial players. They should provide capital for this one. This is the time to buy. If Islamic banking and financial institution can buy some otherwise very good assets which are facing problems, this is going to give an additional boost to Islamic banking and finance in the years to come.
Thank you, Dr. Humayun Dar. And Dr. Muhammad Katan?
I think from view of this region, most of, although they are, I mean, all countries or semi-rich countries, let's say, they most of them they have loans really, and we're expecting shortly that there some deficit in their budgets. So I really believe, which is we've been discussed that a long time ago in the field of Islamic economics, can the private sector share, or there is any solution to share from private sector in the, I mean, in the deficit in the such budgets? Of course, yes, but actually people they are not convinced. Number one, there. Number two, there is no enough regulation to regulate such a problem. Sometimes we have solution, but you are, I mean, really facing lack of regulation, which is will take long time to allow. So I presume there is an interest from all parties to participate from Islamic finance to share in this kind of budget, deficit in budget. And there is enough regulation, or there is a flexible regulation. Yes, I believe one of them, which has happened in Saudi Arabia, a sukuk. The sukuk, to issue an sukuk, they have enough, qualified assets could be sold to locally. This is very important, locally, or at least regionally, because this is sovereign issues. Number two, we always recommend to go to borrowing at a last option and locally borrowing. So if we can really concentrate of such Sharia, Islamic economics fundamentals, we really from Islamic finance sectors can participate in such a problematic issue. Last point, the same structure of borrowing itself needs to be restructured. I presume one of these countries, they facing a huge amount of borrowing from wherever, foreign, let's say, from outside countries, let's say. So restructure some kind of debts. Also, Islamic banks can participate, and they have different solutions, as we know, bay'ud-dayn, kind of solution, and with Sharia conditions and terms.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Khatan. Very excellent answer. Okay, I really have to stop the question here because we are over the time that's planned earlier. But before we conclude, I would like to give again the opportunity for every panelist to say a few words, maybe 1 or 2 minutes before we sign off. Perhaps start with Dr. Humayun Dar, if you don't mind. Oh, sorry, Dr. Daud, are you back online? Okay, perhaps we go first with Dr. Humayun Dar for any last advice you want to share with everyone. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you very much. I would like to conclude once again offering my thanks to Amani Media and expressing my my gratitude to my panelist, distinguished scholars. This is the topic we have chosen. This is an excellent one. I think this is a wake-up call for us to start looking into coming up with solutions on an individual level, institutional level, and national level, and of course on a global level as well. We, those who have an academic background, we have been talking about Islamic social responsibility in the context of Maqasid al-Sharia. However, not much institutional development has taken place in this context over the last 5 decades. When it comes to other institutions, like United Nations came up with United Nations, UNDP, United Nations Development Program came up with SDGs, and before that, Millennium Development Goals. We have failed to come up with such a framework. And I think there is a need for us to look into institutional development of this kind. And I must say that this was the role of Islamic Development Bank. Islamic Research and Training Institute, which is a member of the IDB group, did a lot of theoretical work on Maqasid al-Sharia, but even the parent bank, i.e. Islamic Development Bank, did not listen to them. Now, when SDGs have become popularized, even Islamic Development Bank, you go to its website, it says, we are a champion of SDGs. We should have been focusing on what our own scholars have been asking for a number of decades. This is a tragedy of what we say tragedy of our own. when our own scholars, okay, in the Muslim world, they come up with research and recommendations. Unfortunately, those who are sitting on a policy level or institutions, we should reflect back and start giving respect to the research and a plethora of literature on Maqasidu Sharia and their relevance to economic activity, and come up with something concrete, which is not only relevant for the welfare of Muslims, but it should have a global relevance. It should be for non-Muslims as well. So I think this is the time we have to start looking into this possible thought process.
Thank you very much, Dr. Humayundar. Perhaps Dr. Muhammad Katan, you want to say something for the rest of the audience? Thank you.
Yes, please. One of the benefit of this crisis, really, if there is one of them, is gave us that we still very weak in think tank, let's say, centers. This is quite obvious, not in the underdevelopment country, but even in developed countries, although there is many of them, maybe hundreds or thousands. But I cannot imagine their, informative research. They couldn't build such a solid system to face such kind of crisis, although they are very developed and they very developed even in forecasting studies. But back to our region, or let's say underdevelopment country, still facing very big lack of such kind of centers. Nevertheless, as maybe Dr. Humayun said, there is no enough belief on such scholars or centers, research centers. They spend times, efforts, money, but nobody, listen to such a problem. This crisis really told us very gently, all the human are equal in crisis. So I go back to my people. Please be cooperative. Don't exploit people and opportunities. Let's distribute pain. This is not the time to go very quick for gain. This is during the crisis. Don't be very, keen to gain from a crisis, because who affect your neighbor will affect you soon. This is very important. And last point here, really, I recommend to everybody, instead of courting people, please try to discuss it and go to arbitration more than courting people. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Katan. Very, very strong message and very strong humanity message. Humanity is above everything else. Okay, I pass the final mic to Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar to say a few words before we sign off. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Razi, the moderator. Thank you, all the panelists, Brother Dr. Humayun and Brother Dr. Muhammad Amin Qattan,